The Irish Famine was never an accident. A one-chapter documentary script for the Unspoken Archives. In the middle of the 19th century, Ireland did not simply starve, it was allowed to starve. This story has long been softened by textbooks and footnotes, reduced to a sentence that sounds almost harmless. A potato disease caused a famine. But famine is never just about food, it is about power. And in Ireland, power made a choice when nature failed and empire watched. In 1845, a silent enemy arrived in Ireland's fields. A fungus, potato blight, blackened leaves, rotted crops, and collapsed the only food source millions depended on. The potato failed, but Ireland did not. Because while Irish families scraped the soil for rotten roots, Ireland was still producing food. Ships left Irish ports every single day. Their cargo? Grain, beef, butter, wheat. Food grown on Irish land, guarded by British law, shipped under military protection, away from starving mouths. This is the part history often whispers. Ireland was not empty. Ireland was not barren. Ireland was exporting abundance while burying its dead. The lie of natural disaster. The British government called it an act of God, a tragedy, unavoidable. But disasters do not enforce evictions. Between 1845 and 1852, tens of thousands of Irish families were forced from their homes, not for crime, not for violence, but for failing to pay rent while starving. Ruthless families died by roadsides, whole villages vanished from maps, graves filled faster than ships, and still policy did not change. Aid was offered, briefly, then withdrawn. Why? Because many British officials believed famine was useful. They wrote that Ireland had too many people, too much dependency, too much poverty to be efficient. Starvation, they believed, would correct this. This was not ignorance, it was ideology. Starvation as policy. The ruling belief of the empire was laissez-faire economics, the idea that markets should never be interrupted, even by mass death. Intervening, they argued, would disrupt trade. Saving lives would weaken character. Hunger would teach discipline. So they chose order over mercy, profit over people, trade over survival. And when 1 million Irish men, women, and children died, the empire did not pause. When another 2 million fled across oceans in coffin ships, the empire did not apologize. Ireland's population collapsed, its language faded, its culture fractured. This was not collateral damage, this was acceptable loss. Why this was never an accident. An accident is something you try to stop. The famine lasted 7 years. 7 years of food exports continuing, evictions enforced, relief denied or minimized, warnings ignored. No secret document ordered genocide, but something far colder happened. The British Empire saw the suffering, measured the cost of stopping it, and decided it wasn't worth it. That is not accident. That is intent without fingerprints. The silence that followed. For generations, this truth was buried. The famine was framed as misfortune. The empire's role softened, responsibility blurred. But memory survives where archives fall silent. In Irish songs, in abandoned villages, in family names scattered across continents, and in one stubborn truth history cannot erase. Ireland did not starve because food was absent. Ireland starved because compassion was. This is why the Irish famine still matters, not because it is old, but because its logic is familiar. Whenever power watches suffering and calls it inevitable, whenever hunger is explained away as fate, whenever survival is treated as a privilege, remember Ireland, because the Irish famine was never an accident. It was a decision, and history remembers decisions. The
I'm
famine
dating a
was not
guy
just
from
a
Bamenda
statistic,
in mile
it was
6.
lives
Every
uprooted,
time we make
culture
love, he
tested,
asks me
and
to pretend
survival
I'm dead.
forced into
He says
impossible
it turns him
choices.
on.
While history
Sometimes he
records the
puts
numbers,
tomato
the
sauce or
human
beetroot on
stories
my
tell a
clothes
different
to make
tale
it look
of
like I've been
resilience,
stabbed. Then we make
desperation,
love.
and the
I
decisions
come
people
all the
made to
time,
stay
but I
alive.
find it strange.
1.
Should I be
Families
worried?
torn apart. In every Irish village, families faced impossible choices. Parents sent children away to distant relatives or strangers in hopes of survival. Young men and women walked miles for work, sometimes only to return empty-handed. Communities created makeshift shelters, often in abandoned barns, caves, or roadside ditches. Imagine County Kerry. A small family watched their neighbors disappear one by one. Hunger was a constant companion, and disease often arrived faster than hope. 2. Flight across oceans, the Irish diaspora. The famine sparked one of the largest migrations in modern history. Millions boarded ships to the United States, Canada, Australia, and beyond. The journey itself was perilous. Ships were overcrowded, disease spread quickly, and mortality rates were high. These coffin ships carried more than bodies. They carried memory, grief, and a determination to survive. Cities like Boston, New York, Montreal, and Sydney suddenly had neighborhoods shaped entirely by famine survivors. These communities preserved Irish traditions, music, and language, planting the seeds of a global Irish identity. 3. Subtle resistance and survival strategies. Not all resistance was political. Much of it was survival through ingenuity. Families ate wild plants, seaweed, or whatever they could forage. Communities shared secretly, hiding food from landlords or authorities. Local priests and neighbors risked punishment to deliver small rations to the starving. Even in despair, human ingenuity and solidarity allowed some to endure. 4. Cultural echoes of the famine. The famine did not just take lives, it reshaped Irish culture and memory. Songs, ballads, and poetry told of lost villages and vanished families. Stories of emigration kept hope alive, inspiring generations to preserve language and heritage abroad. Oral history became a weapon against forgetting, ensuring that the lessons of survival and injustice were never erased. The famine's shadow extended far beyond Ireland's borders, affecting politics, literature, and global Irish consciousness for decades. 5. Lessons beyond death. While the first chapter explored the politics of death, this chapter asks, how do people live through engineered disaster? The Irish famine teaches us that even under immense oppression and neglect, humanity finds ways to endure. Communities create lifelines even when governments fail. Memory becomes a form of resistance, ensuring that truth survives. From the ashes of starvation arose a global Irish identity, a network of stories, songs, and survivors that kept Ireland alive in spirit, even as its landscape was forever altered. The famine was never just about death. It was about resilience, memory, and the unyielding will to survive against impossible odds. Ireland survived because its people refused to vanish completely. And through their stories, the famine lives on, a testament not only to tragedy, but to human endurance.